Your ego is not your problem, and it can actually help you to live happier, to be more successful, and live a more fulfilling life. I'm back with another video here on the Ben CB YouTube channel. I think some of you might have expected me addressing a different topic today. If you have been following me for the last 1 or 2 weeks, you might have seen there was a bit of heat on social media, but let me know in the comments if you would like me to make another video on that and maybe addressing some of the points and maybe explaining certain things that I've said and putting things into perspective, or maybe you want me to perhaps have a podcast inviting someone. Obviously the topic was around women in poker, but today we're going to talk about the ego. There was also an interesting comment on Twitter, and I found it interesting because it led me or made me thinking about certain things that are happening right now in society, certain terms that are being used, and I feel like especially men in these days are ashamed for certain traits or certain aspirations that it shouldn't be the case. And I also want to address this right from the beginning. This is not just another red pill fear-mongering speech, or you guys know me, I like to go on a rant, but I want to keep the balance, because I also don't agree with a lot of things that are being said, and just they utilize the aggression, fear, and anger that is amongst young men to build a community and then ultimately sell something. I don't want to sell you anything here. I just speak from my experience of now playing poker for I think 15 years, 12 years, I don't know, 15 years actually, having built 2 businesses, having met a lot of poker players, less successful, very successful ones. I know the struggles, I know the pain. I have a wonderful girlfriend now. We're building a house, and I also want to settle, and I think I've tackled a lot of the problems and obstacles that some of you might be going through, and I simply want to share my experience with you. And I've been working with incredible mentors. I've paid probably close to 100,000 euros on self-development, on mentors, on coaches, and reinvesting into myself, and I've learned a lot of valuable lessons and probably avoided a lot of pain. But obviously I went through a lot of pain myself, so I understand the importance of learning from others. So I hope you're gonna find some value in this. So let's get right into it. The ego. And then this comment on Twitter, I kind of like, he phrased it in a way that he wanted to attack me. I don't know, my English is simply too bad, but I didn't really feel attacked, because yes, I have a bad ego. And if I think I have a bad ego, why would I question someone asking me, oh Ben, do you have a big ego, or a statement, or whatever it is? Why would it trigger me? Because it's the truth. I have a bad ego. And I've had several coaching sessions where the student would tell me, hey Ben, like, I don't know. This is also a problem in these days in our society, that a lot of the traits and things that are actually good are being frowned upon, and you're being ashamed for it, right? Like masculinity and ego and perhaps dominance and alpha and whatever, all these terms that are being thrown around, obviously in connection with the debate around women in poker and my statements. People have been trying to insult me with, oh, you're this alpha or whatever, you alpha bullshit. Like, I think it's actually being an alpha, if you want to say it this way. What is wrong about it? Why does it trigger? If you say, hey, I want to be an alpha, it triggers so many people. It's crazy. But why? I want to explain you why I do believe that a big ego, if you can manage and control it, will actually lead to a lot more happiness and more control and more freedom in your life. And same for traits like being masculine as a man, right? We all hear it left and right, toxic masculinity. What does it even mean? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't even exist, but it's just being invented. And then you have this buzzword, and everything, especially for obviously also men and women, if they see certain traits that trigger them, they use this label to talk you down, to insult you, and it doesn't even make any sense. It would be the same as if I would say, oh, he is a terrible, bad winning poker player. It's like, if you're a winning poker player, you cannot be bad, right? And if you're a masculine man, if you define the traits and characteristics of a masculine man, it cannot be toxic, all right? It doesn't exist. Now, speaking about the ego, and imagine you have a good poker player, and good for me is someone who makes consistent winnings, someone who is a long-term winning player, a full-time poker pro. And you have a bad one, someone that loses, but he has the aspiration to make money, right? So he sits down and is like, hey, I want to make money with poker, I want to win, but somehow I can't. Now, both have a big ego, but one person, the winning player, can manage his ego a lot better, and the other person cannot. So the problem is not the ego. Look at the most successful people in the world, whether it's Cristiano Ronaldo, whether it's Messi, like you take tennis stars, you take entrepreneurs, they all have a freaking big ego. I can tell you that. But what makes them so different to other people is they have learned to manage and control their ego. Now person B that is losing also has a big. And there's a very, I don't know who it said, but the most dangerous people are the ambitious, lazy people. And if you're ambitious, you naturally have a high ego as well. So if you have a big ego and you really want this, the problem is you cannot control, you cannot manage your ego. And notice how I'm not saying suppressing your ego, right? That's not the goal. You cannot suppress your ego. Maybe just a little bit, but if you put your emphasis on suppressing your ego, what you will resist will persist. Right? Having an ego is totally fine, but person B cannot manage and control the ego. That means you will have certain thoughts, right? You lose a bad beat. And what does your ego tell you? Oh, you're so unlucky and that's the only reason why you lose. You would be so much better. You would already be a winning player. You would be one of the best if you wouldn't be losing. We see it in the YouTube comments when I post a video, I make content, I have a session and I have a terrible session and you see a bunch of comments. Oh, I'm welcome to my life for the past 2 years. That's why I'm losing at poker. I'm running bad, right? Always blaming the circumstances. And hold on for a minute. And I will also explain you why this leads to you feeling unhappy, why it feels you lacking gratitude in your life, you are feeling miserable, you're resenting people and things and circumstances, and you're just a very miserable and unhappy person for the most part. If you just keep blaming the circumstances, all the government, my friends, my parents, this and that and this, you give up control. If you give up control, you give up freedom, because now you're this leaf that is just, being pushed to left and right depending on the circumstances. You're not that oak tree that is there rooted in the ground, and no matter how big the storm is, you are not going to be pushed around, right? You're this tiny little tree that is very fragile, and a little bit of wind and boom, you're flying to the left and you're flying to the right. And when you give up control, when you blame your circumstances, you're losing freedom. Now in poker, and that's a great illustration, and you can also mirror it to life, you're blaming the circumstances. What you're telling yourself, your subconscious mind, I'm dependent on my circumstantial situation. I have no control over myself. I cannot predict or not dictate my own future, my own happiness. I cannot create my own luck. A lot of things that are very essential. What you're saying to yourself by doing this is you're not believing in yourself. This is the core understanding of when people tell you, you have to believe in yourself. Well, the fact is that people that have a big ego but cannot control and manage it, they don't believe in themselves. If you believe in yourself, you have this strong conviction that no matter what happens to you, I will make the best out of it. And hear me out. Yes, there are certain things that are not in your control and you might get screwed over. You might lose your bankroll in poker, which happened to me as well, by the way. But what are your options now? You can dwell for months and years and turn into this miserable person and just blaming this one instance instead of just get up again. Now it's time to rebuild and recover. Imagine the levels of happiness, the levels of freedom. If I say whatever happens to me, I can make the best out of it. I will get back to the drawing board and I will find the meaning. I will learn from it and I will use it for my own growth. I have so much control, power, and freedom over my life that I don't have the time and I don't have the capacity to dwell on those things. And person B just keeps doing it. And the ego, and this is a beautiful book from Eckhart Tolle explaining all of these concepts in New Earth, and I think there's another one. The second book is Now. I think it's up there. And the ego loves to feed on negative energy. So it's easier for you to just listen to all that bullshit, that ego that is telling you, so you avoid uncomfortable situations, to face the truth that you might be not so good. So you're listening to that narrative of the ego telling you you're actually quite good. The only reason why you can't win is because of the bad beats, because of your bad opponents, because they don't understand your sophisticated place and all that bullshit that you're telling yourself, right? Or the rigged poker sites, the government, your friends holding you back, whatever it is. Now, the other person doesn't give a fuck about that. He might have the same thoughts, but he has the ability to step in, that self-awareness. So the space between thought A and then the action, that's the awareness he puts in to say, hey, stop, it's my fault. Get back to the lab, try to get better, and then we do our best, and then the result will take care of itself. You have so much ownership, you have so much control over yourself that you will naturally become a happy person. Because if you think about the term happiness, a big part of it is how much control and freedom you have. One also says that happiness is defined by how much control and how much freedom you have over choosing the problems. I think it makes a lot of sense if we take a person that is very, very, very miserable and is trapped in this 9 to 5 and is in a job that he hates, that very often you have to face problems that was not your choice. There's less freedom. Listen, and I understand, I'm also part of the system. I have to deal with problems that weren't my choice in the first place, but I have a lot fewer problems to deal with that weren't my decision. And if I play poker, the bad beats were my choice. I could have decided to stay away from poker. The problems I have to face in business, whether it's being screwed over, my choice. The bullshit I had to go through over the last couple of weeks and all the crap I had to read on social media over my person was my choice. But it's okay, because I know it's my truth and I'm tired of some of the bullshit. Now, a person that cannot do that gives up the control, gives up the freedom, meaning the happiness decreases. It's ultimately correlated. Imagine you go through life and all the problems you face were really not in your control, right? You have to go to your job because you have to earn money, and maybe you cannot just switch jobs. So I understand that. Even I have understanding for your situation. But from today on, if you want to change that situation, you should do everything in your power. Maybe save up some money, maybe look for job opportunities, whatever it is. This is in your responsibility to change your situation if you're not happy with that. All right, yes, I understand it, I get it, but again, it's your responsibility. You got to take that ownership. And that's why you also see a lot of, especially my circle, I have incredible happy people. And it doesn't mean you run around and just like, oh, everything is beautiful. A lot of people also confuse it. No, they're just very content, they're grateful, they appreciate for the things they have, they're barely complaining, they're just normal people and they're pretty all right with their lives. But I can see it's not like they're going on a vacation 3 times a year. They're sometimes for weeks working 10-12 hours a day. Why? Because they're tackling problems on a day-to-day basis that they sign up for. So when I have to tackle problems or they have to tackle problems, it was my choice, all right? It was my choice to get into the business in this industry, work with this person. Now this person screwed me over. My bad. All right, got to learn from it and move on. One says, if we want to summarize this, happiness is actually defined by the amount of problems that you're facing, that you have chosen. The more problems you have that you've chosen and weren't imposed on you by certain circumstances because you are in a job, right? And that's why so many people are miserable, because on that work in the 9 to 5 job that they don't like. It's not necessarily the job, it's just like the constant struggle and dealing with problems that they don't want to deal with and they didn't have any choice over. If I deal with a problem and I fix it, it will improve my situation because I have so much at stake personally in this or in the business. But very often, right, not always, right, let's put things into perspective. If you fix a problem at work, it doesn't necessarily improve your situation. You're doing it for someone else. And those problems weren't your problems in the first place. So in order to make the first step to get closer to becoming a successful poker player, you gotta accept the fact, and this is also where you will be more grateful about, that nobody forced you to play poker. So why are you complaining? Why are you bitching? At least, listen, it's not that bad, the complaining and bitching part, but why do you keep punting off your stack? Why do you disobey bankroll management? Why doing all these terrible actions? You also see me on stream bitching and sometimes whining, but you will never see me tilting. And that's the big difference between you and me, because I've seen comments as well. Oh, Ben, I see you whining lately. Yeah. And do you see me punting? No, it's my A game. I do mistakes, don't get me wrong. I make incorrect calls. I make incorrect all-ins. Poker is not about playing perfect, but it's about maintaining your A game. And my A game will not change no matter how much I bitch and whine, because in between the thought and my action, there's always enough space to remind myself nothing I can do about it. You just gotta stay here. You just gotta keep executing our A game. And at the end of the day, I'm grateful when I come home because I have decided to do that. That problem of downswings and that pain was my choice, nobody else's. So if you're a poker player, that's the very first step to a better and healthier relationship to your ego. And that's when you can start making real progress and get the ego on your side. Ego is also energy. And every energy can be used for something constructive or destructive. And you gotta make that decision. And if you bitch, if you complain and then act upon that feeling that this ego is feeding you, well, it's going to be destructive. If you use it for something good, to sit down and realize, fuck, I'm actually not that good. Shut up, ego, right? It's time to shine. It's time to go into the lab. That's where you're going to see real progress. But, and I know it's difficult, this is going to take some time. It will come back and sometimes it takes over. Meditate, self-talk, whatever it is. But also once you understand how much the relationship to our ego and that our accountability and ownership over our problems also correlates with our level of happiness, I hope it might reconsider you certain things the way you go through life. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a big ego. If someone tells you next time, man, you have a pretty big ego, say thank you. Yes, you're right. I also have a big ego. Nothing wrong about that. And I also think that, and this is where we go into the territories of conspiracy theory. There are certain people that have an interest to weaken society, right? Maybe in order to have more control over us. And one big factor to do so is to remove control, to remove freedom. So we're more dependent on circumstances. Oh, if they would do this, then I would be able to execute my plan. And if they would do this, then I would be happier. But again, you make yourself dependent on the circumstances. You remove control, you remove happiness, you become more independent, and you also become more addicted to that negativity that is your ego feeding you. Eckhart Tolle describes it very beautiful with the pain body and what's happening in our body. Also now we can push it further and think about negativity in general, right? News, movies. Most of the time it's very, very negative. Why are we human beings so drawn to negativity? Think about. Remember you had a conversation, a very boring conversation with someone, and suddenly they talk about drama. Have you heard about John cheating on Nicole? And you're there, right? It's like as if it wakes you up. It wakes this monster of ego that likes to feed on drama. I mean, it's so easy in these days to create viral content with drama and cheating scandals. You see it happening in real time. I don't want to despise everything that is bad. Like, we are humans, we have flaws, and it's we make ourselves exploitable, so to say, with some of our traits. Some of it's biology, some of these are social constructs, however you want to call it, right? And it's also okay to accept certain flaws. It's not about being perfect, but just being more mindful and using certain powers we're naturally gifted, such as the ego, and for men, the masculinity, using it for something good. That's beautiful, all right? My intention here is also to remind you of what we're capable of, and a lot of the stuff that we want to achieve, whether it's on a personal level, on a business level, we already have it within. It has just been buried with one layer after another of bullshit, of crap, of distractions, of misinformation. You just gotta dig deep, release the beast, and then you're gonna be in my opinion, a happier person, and you're gonna be more likely to succeed. So I hope I was able to give you a bit of inspiration, and let me know in the comments, what questions do you have, what interests you. I want to reactivate this channel. I want to speak the truth. I want to contribute my part to help a few people out there, men and women, to just regain control, regain power over your life. Thank you so much for the support, and then see you guys in the next video.